Welcome to Phrase by Phrase, where we study the Bible, one phrase at a time. And today we're looking at James chapter 1, verses 16 through 17a. And this is what it says: "Do not be deceived, my brethren. Every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above." James is still dealing with trials in this section. He has been since the beginning of this letter. And trials come into our lives, and we can get discouraged if we look at things from a wrong perspective. And we can get derailed because we don't understand why God has allowed this trial in our lives. And then with the trial often comes temptation. The enemy takes advantage of the trial that's going on. He allows temptations to come into our lives, and we can think incorrectly about God, thinking that he's caused the temptation since he allowed the trial. And James has told us that God doesn't tempt us, and temptation comes from our own lust. But he also wants us to understand that when God does allow trials in our lives, they are allowed for good reason. God doesn't randomly allow trials. There's always a purpose. Now James begins this section by warning them about deception. He's concerned that his readers will be deceived at this point. When our world is turned upside down, we can think all kinds of incorrect thoughts about God. So James wants to make sure that his readers understand where God is when life is falling apart, because to be deceived, to think incorrectly about God, will only add misery to your situation. And so James issues two admonitions in this section. First, he warns them against deception, and he instructs them to not be deceived for two reasons. First, he says, don't be deceived, because a good God only gives good gifts. See, verse 17 says, every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above. God blesses us with many things. He abundantly supplies our needs. He fills our lives with many expressions of his kindness. And if we were to read verse 17 in isolation, that's how we might interpret it. We might see it as a promise that God gives us all kinds of wonderful things to enjoy. And we're grateful for those times when he does do that. But in order to properly interpret this verse, we have to read it in its context. And the overall theme since the beginning of this letter has been trials and tribulations, and that understanding needs to shape our interpretation of this verse. James uses the term every two times. He talks about every good thing, and he talks about every perfect gift. So this certainly includes the rich blessings that we enjoy, and we're so grateful when those are in our lives. But every also includes the gifts that God brings into our lives that we may not enjoy. In other words, the trials that God allows into our lives are characterized by Scripture as God's gifts to us. And that sounds strange, but it'll make sense if we understand two things, which we will look at next as we study the Bible together, phrase by phrase.